Welcome back to another episode of Impossible Equals Impossible, a live show created to share the full story of tragedy to triumph because I feel like a lot of times on social media, you see the highlight reel, right? And that's not the case, right? There's both always, good and bad to stories. And LinkedIn has been an absolute game changer for me. But for my guest tonight, I mean, her story on what she's been able to do on LinkedIn over the past 4 years almost, just absolutely mind blowing, the power and potential of this platform. And what's really blown me away, and I always like to do this, right? Because so many times when people introduce a guest, it's always a lot of the accolades. I always like to start by telling you about what type of person my guest is. And my guest tonight, her name is Shara Ruffin. And I've Shara's become like one of my good friends on LinkedIn. She's probably one of the most influential people that I've met on LinkedIn, but the way that she operates, you wouldn't know that. She's such a down to earth type of person. And I remember when I first met her, I was like, oh wow. And then I looked at her profile, I was like, holy cow, I was like, you wouldn't have known that based off of how she treats people. And what's really mind blowing is how much she's been able to do over the past 3 to 4 years. I mean, when you're talking about a story of, impossible to impossible, seeing where she was at the beginning, right? Like almost 4 years ago, and what she's been able to achieve. So I want to tell you a little bit about my amazing friend Shara. So she's an independently licensed clinical social worker and former psychotherapist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She holds a bachelor's degree in social work from Lock Haven University and a master's degree from Howard University. She specializes in grief, personality disorders, family trauma, compassion fatigue, military counseling, mindfulness meditation, ADHD, and anxiety. And she's also a board certified telemental health provider. She's also an accomplished author. Shara has achieved Amazon bestseller status 5 times with her social work journal, 90 Days of Prayer. She is also the author of the best selling social work journal, 90 Days of Inspiration, a study companion for social workers preparing for their licensing exams. Additionally, Shara co authored an anthology titled From Start to Success, 40 Stories of Successful C Suite Executives. As the founder and CEO of Journey to Licensure, Shara's company blends wellness, clinical supervision, and professional development coaching to support social workers through their licensure examinations. Her entrepreneurship journey, particularly her utilization of LinkedIn to build her personal brand, was featured on LinkedIn's company page, highlighting her selection from over a billion users on the platform. Journey to Licensure has been featured in prominent publications such as Business Insider, LinkedIn News, USA Today, Success, MarketWatch, and New York Weekly. In recognition of her expertise and influence, Shara serves as a LinkedIn advisor and was named the top 15 LinkedIn expert in Philadelphia in 2023, and the LinkedIn community top voice in social work, thought leadership, and entrepreneurship. Most recently, she was honored with the 2024 Silver Stevie Award for Thought Leader of the Year in Consumer Services by the American Business Awards. And with no further ado, I bring to you my amazing friend, Shara.
Hi, how are
Shara,
you?
thank you so much for being here. It's so incredible to have you. And obviously, like, we read that incredible bio, right? You've been able to do so much in such a short period of time. where I always love starting this conversation is a lot of times on social media, right, when we meet a lot of these quote unquote influencers or big creators, people always kind of think that it started out that way. And maybe it has for a lot of people, but I know for you it hasn't. So tell us a little bit about, who is Shara, and how did you get to this incredible place that you're at now, both personally and professionally?
That's a big loaded question, Paul. So what should I start with? I guess the first thing I would start with um, is I'm a social worker for 20 years. So I've been in the field for that long. My entrepreneurship story didn't even start until about 3.5, almost 4 years ago. I couldn't pass a board exam, and I was really struggling because I had lost my job a week before the pandemic started, and I ended up having to really think about what was going to be the next course of action for me. At the time, I was pretty depressed. I was really just stuck. I was 3 kids at home. I had to homeschool them and find the strength to be able to figure out how I was going to take a board exam. The board exam for me takes about 2 years, but it took me a decade to get there. So when I didn't pass in November 2019, I literally became really depressed for about 10 months. And let me know if you can hear me. There's a lot going on, so not sure if you can hear me or not.
No, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. So it was pretty, just a really dark time. During that time, I was on LinkedIn a lot, talking about the depression, talking about the anxiety, talking about how I was struggling to pass this thing. And I'm home with the kids. I barely get out of bed. I'm having migraines. I don't have insurance. I'm afraid to see a doctor. I'm having panic attacks. Um, the only thing I could do control was playing Nintendo Switch. That's all I did. I played a game called Animal Crossing. It's kind of like Sims. And Paul, I know you're old enough to know Sims. And I would play that day and night when I didn't have the migraines. And it comforted me. But I knew eventually I would have to come out of that. I eventually got on assistance and state insurance and everything, was able to get support. But it took about a good almost a year before I was able to get back into the room to take that exam again. When I did pass it the following year, I let LinkedIn know because I had been active on LinkedIn for about a year prior to 2019, but I've been on LinkedIn for about 14 years. So at the time, I decided to just wanted to see if I could help other people. So I shared the story on LinkedIn. It's actually a featured section of my profile. It's very much buried, but of that 10-year journey, losing a child, having another baby that was medically compromised, going through a divorce, picking up my career after the divorce. It was a 10-year journey just to get a piece of paper. So failing it was a big, big pause for me. When I did pass it, I ended up getting on Clubhouse and teaching for free for 6 months to help people to pass this exam because the board, it's hard. I have a learning disorder, ADHD, and generalized anxiety, in clinical depression. I talked about it actively because as a therapist, I was told I don't look like what I've been through. But I needed to talk about it. So on LinkedIn, a whole year, whether I was cooking, cleaning, I literally brought people through that journey with no makeup. I mean, nothing like the polished videos I have now. But I would just show up as I was, and I would talk about those things I was struggling with and trying to inspire other people while I was in a dark place. So that post blew up because I had took people on that journey from seeing me stuck, broke on food stamps, medical insurance, taking care of my children, trying to find the strength to get out of bed every day, trying to find a new why. Um, it was quite a time. Looking back, it seems like yesterday. I feel a little bit far removed from the dark space, which thank God I am. But I talk about it often with my colleagues. I end up birthing a business from that story. It went from zero to six figures in 7 months my first year. It's now at 500,000 in valuation. So 3.5 years. But it started from just me telling the story and just freely wanting to help people. I did that for almost half a year. And I had no idea it was going to turn into something that it did. I still pinch myself of everything that happened after that point. But feel free to ask me questions while I'm going on because I feel like I'm kind of summarizing a little bit.
No, I mean, I think everything that you said was so powerful, and like one of my favorite things about you, like obviously LinkedIn's been a huge game changer for me,
Hmm.
but when I heard about your story, I was like, wow, right? I mean, I think a lot of people have that experience where it's like they've been on LinkedIn, but they just didn't use it, and then you come back and you're able to really channel it. One of my favorite things about you, and I think why you and I really kind of like hit things off pretty much like as soon as we met, is
Hmm.
this whole like vulnerability piece, right? Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people show up conditionally, I feel like, and conveniently, whereas for you and I, like we're just there's no like filter for us, like we're just who we are all the time. And I think, and I'm curious for you, like the biggest challenge that I've noticed a lot on LinkedIn is that a lot of people don't feel like they are able to kind of show up as like who they are and genuine because of the professional nature of the platform, right? It's like, oh, this is a professional platform, like I can't talk about that. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
well, at the same time, we're human beings, right? Like the there's things that maybe like a lot of people don't feel are fit should be on a professional platform, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to human connection. And I always have like a soft spot for people who they birth kind of like a business or end up turning what was like one of their biggest challenges into their greatest strengths. And I feel like there's so many people who have so many unique gifts and opportunities, and we're always trying so hard to like reach up, right, to grow and to teach and train with all these like top people. And I'm curious for you if you've noticed this as well. It seems like what really catapulted you further than you could have ever expected was when you kind of took a step back and you started reaching back to teach. And you're like, well, you know, there's always going to be somebody. I always like to say there's somebody who's always going to be ahead and behind of you in life. So it's important to reach up to grow and also reach back to teach. And I know I found in my experience that when I decided to reach back to teach, it catapulted me further than I ever thought that it would. And all the people that I would try to like reach out to or that I wanted to, a lot of us are servant minded, right? Like if you want to connect, if you want to build relationships with somebody who has an incredible network, giving back is probably the easiest way I've seen to get into stuff. So I'm really curious for you, like, is that how your experience has kind of been, and why I titled this event like Her Journey to Licensure? Because at the beginning it was really all about you, right? You're like, I need to pass this exam so I can like get to that next level. And then once you did that, you just went kind of like from the next level straight to the top because you started reaching back to teach. So I'm kind of curious for you on how you see that.
Um, I never even thought about any any of that. Like it's funny that you asked me that because I get a lot of colleagues, people from all over in different industries ask me, "How did you do what you did?" Whether they're looking at my revenue, whether they're looking at all the accolades and all that stuff, and I didn't ask for any of it. I started out with the intention of wanting to help because I saw that once that post went semi viral, I guess, I'm like, I thought there was something there. And then I had an old mentor tell me, who actually introduced me doing video on LinkedIn a year prior. And I'll never forget her words of encouragement. She said, "You're hiding behind these shiny posts. This is great, but no one knows who you are. You need to start getting on video and sharing your story." I was like, "What story? I don't have a story." And she's like, "I need you to do video for about 90 days." I said, "She's crazy. I don't have that type of time. I have to put on makeup, all this." But it was a lot of internalized fear, a lot of negativity. But the next day, I started doing video in a big old oversized Minions T-shirt, cooking dinner, and just starting to share. And it's funny because a lot of people have been following me on LinkedIn for over the years. They feel like they know me personally because of all the things I've shared, all the milestones I've shared, all of the vulnerability of whether I've had health issues, whether it was when my brother got killed, whether it was um, when I was having my own issues, even at the height of what people perceived as success, when I would hit certain milestones. They didn't know that I was still struggling. They didn't know I still had imposter syndrome. And I would share those things because on LinkedIn, you only see but so much. There's still another side of that person you won't see. And I wanted to break that barrier of, yes, I may be successful, or what you may perceive as successful, but I'm a real person. I have real feelings. I have, issues just like anyone else. And I wanted to share that journey. But I had no idea that me sharing those things for a whole entire year, every single day. I mean, from my point of view, I was tore up. I was just not in a good place. And I was sharing, and I had no idea that that whole year was really the back end of building a brand. No idea until I actually launched a business. Because me being on LinkedIn, I told my mentor, I didn't have a business. I don't. Why am I doing this? She's like, trust me, I need you to start doing video, and you'll learn why later. I had no idea what personal branding was, or none of that. It was just me wanting to help because um, I was tired of hiding. And I had a couple of people reach out to me of all the education, all the letters behind me, all this stuff. They was like, I'm struggling. I was like, well, I'm struggling too. And I remember putting up a post of being on food stamps, and it was like, what? You're 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 depressed? What? You broke? What? You're stuck? And I said, yes. It's like, but it made it relatable. Um, and I wanted to be relatable. I didn't want to be looked at for all the stuff that was on my page. Even though that's what people see now, of course, but I always remind people that when I started, my page did not look like how it looks now, at not at all. But a lot of what's happened to me, I think, is because I set the intention to serve, and not, um, it wasn't a monetary thing. It just so happened that that story led to the pain point of others, which led to what it led to, whether it was financial, whether it was recognition, all that other stuff. Even with LinkedIn, I never expected any of the attention that I got from them, whether it's being a part of their advisory committee, whether it was being featured on their page very recently for what my LinkedIn story was and how I was able to build a brand. Um, and the revenue, especially in my field in social work, we're told that we're broke, we don't make any money. And I let them know, I was like, I make 16 to 20K every month on LinkedIn. They're like, what? And I share that with them. And reason why I talk about money, money is definitely not important, but in my field, we're shamed for talking about it. It's a taboo in social work. So I bring it up to my colleagues a lot to say, value yourself, value what you give, what you bring to the table. You need money to live. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to value yourself. I had to learn that when I first started coaching. I was doing $25 a session, and I had another coach say, excuse me, what are you doing?" And that conversation had more to do with how I felt about myself. And I was thinking, people are not going to pay me for this. I was totally wrong. Within a month's time, I made my first $16,000. I had never seen that amount of money in my life ever. But I spent the first 7 months for free, just coaching, helping people pass their boards. That's all I did. For 6 months, I had my license. I could have did anything else, but I felt called to help others. Um, it just so happens that it pivoted me in a totally different direction than I thought. Period. Till this day, I still kind of look back that just to think when I gave you my bio, I was like, holy crap, because I don't think about it. I just do things. But I let people know, and some people don't believe me. I still get scared every time I get on a live or audio. I'm an introvert, so I become extroverted when I need to. But I let people know that side of me that, yeah, I still struggle with it. Um, am I good enough? Am I helping enough people? How can I serve more? And that's always been my heart is wanting to serve, which is why I became a social worker. Um, but yeah, that story kind of took off of life of its own, and still is. But I'm just thankful that I've been able to do a lot of things personally and professionally that a lot of my colleagues have only been dreaming or think it's a figment of their imagination. With a lot of people on LinkedIn, when it comes to vulnerability, I've got shunned in certain audio rooms, but even talking about vulnerability and what that means, because people think that, oh my God, you shouldn't be dirty, put your dirty laundry on LinkedIn. I'm like, I'm not putting my dirty laundry on LinkedIn. I'm letting people know who I am. And I'm unapologetically to that because I grew up in a culture where you're seen and not heard. So vulnerability can mean different things to different people. Um, but for me, it was more so me trying to connect with people beyond what they were seeing, so they can have a understanding of me beyond those shiny things, that accolades or titles and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was so powerful. And I think you said something that really kind of blew my mind because so many times, right, people have this like predisposition and expectation of like when they see that, oh, somebody has a master's degree or this or that. I remember like in I was born and raised in Hawaii, and in my finance career, I was meeting with like so many people who had PhDs, master's degrees, all these type of things. And then I would look and I'd be like, wait a minute, they have all this, they have all the certifications, all the accolades, but the money wasn't there. They were in like a ton of debt because they were going to college and all these type of things. And I think my favorite thing about you is that you don't really believe your own press. And I feel like as much as this phrase that my mentor has of being unoffendable, as much as it is about not being affected by negativity, I think it's just as much about kind of staying grounded. And you're always, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about yourself in the stature or the way that like you actually are now. And to me, that's one of the reasons why you're one of the few massive creators who are genuine. Like one of the ones I'd say that I actually deeply respect, and your story is so inspiring because you've you've actually kind of gone through it, right? There was no shortcuts for you. You didn't invest in like programs, do like any type of pods. Like you literally like grew through everything that you went through, and it really is so inspiring. I'm curious for you because I love impossible equals impossible because I think for so many of us, we don't realize that we all have that impossible moment, like whether you've had it or yours is kind of coming. I'm curious, what are like two or three things that, like, if somebody is in an impossible situation, right? You're kind of talking to someone is who you were. What two to three things would you share with them that you had wished that you knew on your journey?
I would say the first thing is, um, you are where you're planted for a reason. There are so many times in my journey I felt like I could have gave up. Even recently, I was thinking about stepping away from my business as successful as it's like, you know, um, should I step away from this? And people are like, "Are you crazy?" They're looking at the money. I'm just like, ah. I was losing touch with the why I was doing it, and I needed to take a step back. Um, I think it's important that you understand that life experiences will be what they are. It changes, it never stays the same. Even when you think it's like the worst thing that can happen to you at that time, it one day will be a memory in time. I tell my colleagues that all the time. A lot of times when I'm talking to them, it's me talking to my past self of what I wish somebody would have said to me, that this too shall pass. And it always does. Every time I have a colleague of mine go through a hard time, mentally, physically, emotionally, even beyond the exam, when they're done and they come out of it and they're like, man, you were right. I was like, see, told you. It will pass. It will pass. It won't be the same. Every day you wake up is another day to rewrite the story, another day to change it. to respond differently to it. And sometimes, even me, I still have those moments where I get stuck. And I have to remind myself that, hey, this will pass. This is a moment in time. It will not stay this way forever. And I've had those moments. I remember, and I can share this story. I remember 2 years ago, my revenue went way down. I had like less than $1,000 in it. Mind you, I was used to $10,000 to $20,000 months, and it was because I hadn't learned as a business owner how to manage money when it came to systems and processes in place. I wasn't really looking at where everything was going because I was pouring money back into my business, but not into the right things I needed for it to grow. And I remember I was like, up, this is it. I'm going to have to go back to work. I really love what I'm doing, that this is not working. And I met a coach of mine who I'm still with now, who said, you're going to make it through. We're going to find a way to do this. And I got back on track. But that was at a point where I was like, I've had all of this go on. I came this far and now this happens. Um, just like entrepreneurship and journey, so is life. It's, it's life, and it's hard today, but it won't be hard tomorrow. um, I try to tell everyone that just having a hard time, I know what that's like. And I've been through several of those hard moments and hard times, uh, especially when I think about some of the losses I've had, which I probably could have gave up then when I lost my daughter, when I gave birth to her, she was a stillborn, or when my brother got killed, or um, just some of the professional obstacles I had with trying to climb the ladder with a baby on my head who's medically compromised, working 3 hours away from home, having to do public transportation, cross a big, huge interstate to get to work after two buses and a train, then walking about a mile and a half to work. I did that for about 6, 7 years. My job was in an industrial park. So taking home bed bugs, scabies, lice, all types of things I could tell you. um, you know, and me trying to remember, Shar, um, you may not know what you're doing, but I need you to keep going. I remember how my colleagues it's a long road going to the hospital. They used to fly past me in their fancy cars and all that. I'm walking, rain, sleet, snow, cold, hot. And they would try to pick me up, and I said, no, you keep going. And the reason why I needed that long walk, because I needed to understand and remain in the mindset of struggle. Yes, I wanted a car, I wanted to do all these other things, but where all the money was going at that time, which I barely had because of the divorce, was putting my money back into investing into myself, which is now paying its dividends. But back then, my colleagues couldn't understand why I was doing all these extra trainings that I barely pay for, borrowing money from family and friends to enhance my resume while taking care of a child. Um, Now, about a decade later, my son just turned 10. Um, that why has blossomed. I can be home with them remotely. I can hire him help if I need to. I have the flexibility, the financial freedom I didn't have before. But back then, I wanted to quit many, many, many times. Many times. Because when my husband had a baby on me, I wanted to quit. During our marriage, all types of stuff I could tell you. There's so many times I could have quit. But so when people ask me what kept me going, I think it was that I knew I had to keep fighting, not only for my son but for myself. I knew there was something beyond the white walls of my office. I just didn't know what that was. I had this nagging feeling. I was helping people as a therapist, but there was something else there that I just didn't know. I would wake up in the middle of the night like, there's something missing. There's something else, and I don't know. Now I know what that is many years later. And I think for some people, we ignore that nagging feeling that we know, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of not having a direction or not knowing. And that's why I tell a lot of my colleagues to just hang on. Um, this will pass, and it does. A lot of my colleagues, when they struggle like that, I had a lady that I coached. She I coached her 3.5 years ago, and she had took her exam several times. She's legally blind, and by the time I got to her, she was broken, stuck in mindset, had this scarcity mindset. And I remember she's like, "This is my 12th time. I can't do this anymore." And I was like, "You can. This is just another time. Um, you need to do it again." And I told her my story, and she's like, I'm gonna try. But even then, she would fight with herself through that process, and I would be there to beat that negativity down, say, we're going to keep going. Don't entertain it. Let's go. Keep going. Keep going. There were times where she just wanted to give up. I said, nope, we're not even going to entertain it. I could see it. Let's go. Keep going. Um, I wish somebody would have been that to me, but I had to do that for myself. So, anyone out there that is struggling, I would just say it does not last, but be anchored in what you believe in and keep going.
Yeah, that was powerful. There's a quote that I love that talks about how um hard, or it's like tough times don't last, but tough people do. And you shared so much in that. And I think one of the things that really resonates with me, right, is my through line in life has always been this idea to be the person for others that I wish that I had. And it's like, even the journey that my adventure to LinkedIn has taken is kind of the same thing, right? Like when I created my system, I was like, I had no intention to monetize it, to, even charge for it. I was just like, well, I need to learn how to use LinkedIn, right? Because where I was born and raised, like nobody used it. I don't even think I knew that LinkedIn was really a social media platform. And to think that a couple years later, that I teach people how to use it, it's so fascinating. You talked about something, Shara, that I thought was so powerful about, despite like all the odds, you knew that this is like where you needed to be. And my word, theme, and area of focus for 2024 is intuition. And I feel like it's the secret weapon that I have now in my back pocket that I didn't really embrace for the longest time. And I'm curious for you, how did you learn how to kind of start listening to your intuition? And if somebody like is out there, right? Because for the longest time, I've had such a weird relationship with the whole like spiritual type of thing for the longest time. How did you really learn to not only start listening to your intuition but harness it where it's become an incredible asset? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the social work space, but you are easily one of one in your field. There's nobody doing the things that you are in your field, as apparent by the results and incredible accomplishments and achievements that you've been able to um, create over the past few years. So yeah, that's where I want to go next.
I'm still trying to, like I said, I feel like I'm still trying to uh, process all that because, Paul, to tell you the truth, I've always been, you probably picked that up already, very type A, always a go getter, just go, go, go. I've had to learn recently to pause, to sit, to be okay with accepting everything that has come my way. Um, it's very hard for me to do, to even get caught up in that stuff. My goal is if I could help just one person, I was fine with that. It just so happened that it became many. Um, that was just my goal, my passion for wanting to help my colleagues get through this thing, so they can move on in their careers. I didn't think it would be life changing the way it did, for them, the way it was for me, if that makes any sense at all. Intuition for me, hasn't, I've always ignored it, to tell you the truth. Uh, I always ignored it growing up. I had to learn how to trust it. And there have been times in my professional and personal life where I went against it, and it bit me in the butt. But I've had to learn how to lean into that because it's God's compass. It's my compass. I might as well trust it, whether I'm right or wrong. If I'm wrong, I've learned something from it. If I'm right, well, I win. So I've had to learn to trust it no matter what. There are still times, and anyone out there that I still like, I don't know if this is a good chart, but I do it anyway. Whenever I have stepped out on faith, out on fear of just doing something, it has never not turned out wrong. And what I mean by that, yes, I've had some bad ohs, but when I say it's never turned out wrong, it was either a lesson or a blessing, one of the two. And I think for me, I was willing to take the risk because life is so fleeting, it's so short. Looking at my son, he's 10 now. I remember holding him, and now he's 10 years old and calling himself a preteen, which technically he is. Um, Children give you such a light to remind you how fleeting life is because they grow so fast. And I remember my parents saying that. Most recently, I shared that with my father, and he's like, when I shared with him on when Jaden turned 10 on Sunday, he was like, "Oh, yeah." He shared a story with me. He's like, "Yeah, I remember crying in the car when we left you, dropped you off at college." I said, "Huh?" And my dad's not the crying type. Like, he's a military man, very militant guy. Never, I've seen him cry once in my life. So when him and my mom had dropped me off, he said, "Yeah, we cried in the car. You were the first one to go." He said, "You're going to have that feeling too when he decides to leave the nest." But I shared those, like, they grow so fast. He's like, "Yeah, they do." Um, Time is something, it's a gift, but it's also one we often take for granted until it's not there. So I guess that's how I look at it when it comes to intuition. It's given to you for a reason. Trust it. If something goes wrong, it goes wrong. You learned a good lesson. On to the next. Um, but it doesn't mean that I don't go into it not with fear. I just choose to acknowledge it and feel it and still do it.
Yeah, that was powerful, and I think one of the things that you had said is like one of the things for me, and I'm kind of curious if this was similar for you. A lot of times there's a really long quote by Marianne Williamson talking about like our deepest fear, right? And I think it's really this idea that I think people are really afraid how powerful they truly are, because once you confront that, there really is no going back. Like you can't unsee your potential once you get to that point, or when you see that, oh man, I've been playing so small, right? And you're just like, wow. I know one of the things that you said that really kind of identified with me is you had talked about how in many ways you needed to hit that rock bottom, right? I feel like a lot of people say a lot of things to me that sound good, but you and I both know, like, when you're actually in the thick of things and the way that life works, it doesn't work that way. I'm curious if you believe as well that people need to hit rock bottom, because it's easy to give like the hypotheticals, right? Like, oh well, do this, but until you've actually been in that situation and you have to learn how to fight for yourself, to whether it's to survive. And there's a lot of language that gets such a negative connotation, right? And people are like, oh well, I'm a thriver. And I always say that, well, before you learn how to thrive, you best believe that all those people had to at some point figure out how to survive, right? And that's why I love the name. That's why the name of the show is called Impossible Equals I'm Possible, because so many people just see the I'm possible part, but it's like there was something that you had to overcome to get to that point of I'm possible, right? Like you didn't just like wake up like, oh, I'm Char, like everything's jolly. You had to go through a lot of arduous situations, and the fact that you did it publicly is so powerful to me, because I feel like you had shared a lot of those things before, not only while you were kind of going through it in real time, but really before you had even processed it for yourself.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if you remember those LinkedIn news, not the LinkedIn newsletter. What do they call it? The LinkedIn articles. I think when I knew storytelling was the way for me to go was in 2018. I don't even know where LinkedIn articles are put on the profiles anymore because they're so varied because they're pushing the newsletter. But I remember my first newsletter was talking about my military story, being a former military spouse and how I lost my daughter and my ex husband in our marriage because that's such a closed in community that if you're not in it, it's hard to understand. And I had so many people respond back. I'm like, wait a minute. In 2018, people really weren't. I mean, it's a lot more now, but people really were not storytelling or any of that. And I just was like, I'm going to share something personal. I'm going to go ahead. I was still working as a therapist at the time. And I was like, I'm sharing this story. And I did. And it started the journey of sharing, even through pictures and words. And you never know who's watching. I remember my first speaking engagement in Toronto, Canada, came from me sharing a video of my son. Um, he was about 2 or 3 years old, and he's clapping, and because he doesn't have to get injections in a place you don't want to get them. He had kidney failure, and he was not supposed to make it to his age. He only had a year. Um, they said he got the surgery, and of course, that's him in the background. He's about to go see fireworks, so he's excited. Um, but it was just a time where I shared that, and I had no idea. Someone said, "Hey, we'll pay you 20 grand. Come and tell us the story." It was at a child care nursing conference in Toronto. I had never been there. I was like, I don't even know if I should do this, but I'm glad it did because it felt like when I told that story to a bunch of strangers, it felt like that was a slight launch. Like I had touched into it, but not really. Um, and I realized that I need to keep sharing. And it really just went back to that mental health professional of being in a place where most people won't walk into, especially being a Black woman on top of that and sharing the stigma with mental health on top of being a provider. I wanted to break that separation. I used to do it a lot with my clients. Of sharing in ways that would help them if it was ethically sound. Um, so yeah, it's been quite a journey, quite a journey.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like one of the things that I did recently, I kind of talked about it, was like over this past weekend, like I wrote my book that I've been kind of sitting on for the past couple years, and I had this massive kind of where everything just kind of hit me over the weekend because I'm so used to like taking guests on this journey, right, on this show where it's like even though it's an hour, sometimes a little over, you really like go through this incredible like journey that is your life, and you're just like, wow. Like they're always blown away after because they're like, wow, like I don't think I was ever asked that before. Like I didn't realize that I did all these things until you had taken me on this journey where one of the things that I love about you, and I think where you and I really kind of connect, is especially in this space of mental health. I think a lot of people talk and they say a lot of things, but then when they're gifted the opportunity to practice what they preach, a lot of people choose to run, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But I feel like ever since I've known you, you've always lived all of your messages. I think it was just a couple of days ago where you had opened up about some of your health challenges that you were having. And people see you and they see like, the awards that you're winning for your business, the money that you're making, the people that you're impacting. Like I always see the testimonials, and I'm so happy for you because I know the journey that you've walked to get here. And I feel like you don't think that you'll ever arrive, which is kind of how I feel about the journey for me. It's like there's always a new level, right? There's always going to be somebody that you can help. There's always going to be something that you can learn. And yeah, I would love for you to kind of speak on that because it's such a rarity. I was reading this book and it talked about how you need to understand the difference between building a brand versus living a lifestyle, right? And I feel like for you, journey, that's why I titled the name of this show like Her Journey to Licensure, because none of this is a brand. Like, this is, you live this day in and day out. You're helping people, you're showing up even when you don't want to, right? Like, today's been an interesting day for both of us, and here we are having this conversation. So yeah, I'm gonna hand it back to you.
Yeah, it's been a day for me. I haven't put it up yet, but earlier I was at the hospital because my stepdad had a seizure. He has advanced lung cancer, brain metastasis, so it's metastasized to his brain, which was hard. Today it was a hard day. Earlier this morning, and being with my mom to deal with that, and then going to go see him. Thank God he was awake, and he'll be home soon. But even going through that, which has been really been the past 2 years since he started having seizures right after my brother got killed, and it's terminal now. So they're just trying to help him with quality of life. Dealing with that earlier, then taking my sons and kids to the movies, and then I was like, I promised Paul I would come and do this. I was like, I'm coming to do this and share. I was laid out in the cot for it because I had a migraine. My menstrual cycles on, so everything's all over the place. But I was like, I'm gonna lay down for a little bit, get back up, and I'm here now. That's just the way I live my life. That way, it's not that I'm sharing everything, but I share the pivotal things that I want people to be able to connect to know that they're not by themselves. So me sharing that, yes, I have high blood pressure. Um, I've been dealing with it probably for the last year and a half with stress. Um, getting caught up in got to help you, and I'm falling to pieces. Going to the ER just for the doctor for 8 hours for the doctor to say, you need to not be here. You're too young. You need to get your life together. Go exercise. Go do something. But if you keep going the way, you're going to be in the ground early. And my ancestors, my family tree goes back about two, almost 300 years. I was able to trace back, and a lot of them died early from heart disease. A lot of them died early from Alzheimer's. A lot of them died early from high cholesterol. A lot of heart issues, and I'm having them now. And I wanted to talk about that. I'm 38 years old. Um, and I'm becoming, as I'm getting older, becoming more susceptible to those genetic predispositions, but also realizing that I have a son that I want to see, my grandchildren, even my great grandchildren. I need to start getting my life together. So I shared the other day that when I got home, um, I got on that elliptical, did 18 minutes listening to Beyonce. I was like, look, I'm going. I thought my heart was going to jump on my chest. I was like, it'll be okay. Think about all those things that are stressing you out right now, um, and keep going. And I got off. It felt good. God had good sleep, and got up today, and I'm here. After meditated and did what I needed to do, but I share those things because I don't ever want to be looked at as you've made it. I won't say I made it until I meet Jesus. That's my I made it.
Yeah.
When I'm in the ground. I want to go to the grave empty. That's my goal. I don't
Wow.
want any of those. I don't want my life experiences to stay with me. I want them to be lessons for other people, not for me. I've lit them, wrapped them with a pretty bow in books and words. Here you go. I mean, people still look at, there's a poet. I can't think of her name right. I'm looking at her. I can't think of her. We all know her. But her words
Maya
start with
Angelou.
that. Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes, her books still live through her, and she's been gone for a while. Um, I That's the way I want my legacy. I want them to be left in the people that I've helped and the memories that I leave with them. That that is more valuable than money. I want the memories of my children, whether me or my fiance, one of us goes first, whatever. I want the memories are what I invest in, and that's the memories. Every time I interact with someone, I want to leave them with something that they can stay hopeful to. That to me is that's the gift. That's the work.
Yeah, that's powerful. I couldn't agree more with everything that you said, because even like when I was in my finance career, like I've made people millions, and you once you make the money, this is like the myth that nobody tells you. It's like it's only once you get to that point of when you make the money that you find out how like irrelevant that it is. And it's like most people don't ever get to that point where they get to experience that. And you brought up something, especially for entrepreneurs, that I think is something that hits home for so many people, right? It's like everybody praises Steve Jobs for like his brilliance and what he was able to leave the world, but they always leave out the part that he said that when he was dying on his deathbed, he would have traded his billions for his health. I find it so funny how that always gets left out of a lot of these things, which is why I love doing this show, because we talk about like the full story, right? And but with that being said, I feel like this idea of balance is really like a myth too, because I mean, this, like you were a single mom when you were building your business. Like there comes certain times and seasons in life where your business, you're investing most of your time in your business, and then once you're able to build it, then you can kind of take a step back and enjoy more flexibility and autonomy. But one of the things that you talked about that really resonated with me is I always think that the reason why I will always be an entrepreneur is because it allowed me to create my own rules. And I think so many people live a life that other people told them to live, or they were influenced by what somebody said that they should want or should do. And because my word theme and area of focus this year has been intuition, like this question of what do you say has really changed the trajectory of my life, because I realized we're the only ones that get to experience like the rewards, or or I'd say consequences, both good and bad, of our choices. Yet for most of us, we're usually the last person that we ask when it comes to making decisions. And I always think to myself, that's so interesting how that is. It's like, why don't we? And you talked about it earlier, right? Value and self worth. I I love asking this question because I know you're probably just as much obsessed about personal development as I am, and it's been such a huge thing on your journey. Who has been the most impactful person in your life, and what was the most valuable lesson that they've taught you?
Oh my God, that's a hard choice, but however, I have to say the people that birthed my mom and my dad. I mean, I have to. They they shaped me. Um, they're the first people that I opened my eyes to, and I think I realize that even more as a parent now. The power I have in shaping my son at his age, the influence, because to me it starts at home. So I would probably have to say my parents first. Um, then now definitely my son. Having a child has definitely changed the way I look at life than what it was when I didn't have one. But I've had many mentors, teachers along the way, at every step of that journey. But I have to always go back to what my first teachers were, my parents. The probably the one lesson they both taught me was resilience and not giving up.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's so funny because a couple weeks ago I was on a call with this guy who is like a Paralympian. He's coming on the show later on. I don't know if it's this month or it might be next, but he was talking about how in many ways like his parents kind of taught him what not to do. And I think that one of the biggest lessons that I've learned on my journey is that most of the people in life are going to show you what not to do, right? How not to treat people, how not to go about things. And it just makes you appreciate the people. Like I don't know if you feel the same way, but my circle is so small. Like I have maybe like a handful of people that are really like, I call them like ride or die people. You know, if anything happens, they're people who will go to war with you. And it's seeing so much of that, it really makes you appreciate those people because you know how rare it is. I I always like want to go to this point because I find it so funny. Char, you're probably one of the most influential people on LinkedIn, and you and I talk about this pretty frequently about how there's a lot of fronting on the news feed on LinkedIn, right? A lot of the stuff that you see isn't necessarily true. And I know like we've both had conversations about this. I feel like you have such a unique approach because you started from the bottom. I mean, you'd probably even say probably like below, right? From where you're at now. How have you been able to navigate this journey, right? Because I know one of the things when I became an entrepreneur, I was really surprised how powerful money is in the scheme of things, and how deceptive it can be, right? When you talk about like PR and people paying to be in massive magazines, paying for best-selling books, like all these type of things. I know um, for your story, because you and I've talked about this, you've really kind of gone through the journey of actually doing the work, right? Like writing your journals, sharing so much of your story to the point that you really weren't even a keynote speaker before you gave your first keynote, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like somebody just picked up your story. How have you been able to navigate, and what insight can you share for people about knowing how to filter, like who are some of the real thought leaders, influencers, and creators to follow? Because I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors on LinkedIn, and I'm really curious because you have kind of that inside information. If one, is that true? I mean, I'm pretty sure it is because you and I've talked about this, but anything that you can share to really1help people on their journey to navigating LinkedIn.
Oh wow. You're always asking a loaded question. I'm gonna have to put my thinking hat on. The first thing I would say when it comes to influencers, the if when you said on one of those influence pictures, I was like, I don't think I'm none of that. So I was like, that's the first thing that popped in my head. I was like, but I had a friend of mine said that to you yesterday. She's like, well, they picked you out of a billion people to be on their page, so you're something. I was like, whatever. Um, so it's funny because that in my mind when I those type of things happen, I literally never look at them that way. I look at them as oh well, there's something else God says I puts in my path, and I'm just gonna keep it pushing. I think it's important to realize that if you think yourself as an influencer, you're getting away from the reason why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. It the I don't like the word influencer. It just I don't know. I just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. There are plenty, just like any platform, any not just LinkedIn, anywhere. People, the internet lies. We're all human. It's important to be able to connect to a real person, and I think on LinkedIn, that for me was I've met some of the most um, interesting people. Some have become my best buddies. I've also met some very interesting imposters, and and that's okay because that's how you learn. I think that's where earlier in our conversation we talked about trusting yourself and your intuition and trusting that gut when you know something's not right. And listening to it as best as you can to know that when you make connections with people, genuinely making connections with them. I've had people, especially lately, I've felt like a dolphin swimming with sharks. And it's a weird analogy, but at this point in my journey, my circle is just extremely small. Literally, and I think I have to have that way because I've had so many things over time. The last couple of years happened because people just want to take. And I understand people coming into your life for a reason, a season, and that's okay. At the same time, I'm very protective of this because this is all I got. Your mind is the most powerful thing you have. You can either, it can be your worst enemy or your best friend. It can elevate you or it can keep you in a dark space. It can imprison you. And that's, I have to protect it. It took me a very long time to get to that place of protecting it. It's it's something I have to do. So um, I just would caution people that as you connect on LinkedIn, go into connecting with intention. Yes, people are on here to make business, but really understand why you're reaching out or why they're reaching out, um, and set the intent for what it is. But just be careful navigating. There's so many layers to that, Paul. But for me, it's always just been about generally connecting. I've been quite lucky to be able to navigate it unscathed to a degree, but you live and you learn. So I would just say, as people are connecting and navigating LinkedIn, I just went into it with wanting to make connections, wanting to engage with people. I again never would have thought that it would turn into something totally different than what it did. But I've had met so many beautiful mentors that literally mentor me freely because of me showing up for myself and showing up for the people that I serve. So many people, Paul, you know this already, get caught up in the noise of other people's perceptions of them, the noise of the perception of themselves, and it keeps them from moving forward. It keeps them from being in their purpose. And it sometimes keeps them from evolving to the person that they want to be. And I try my best to just, even now, shut out the noise, the imposter syndrome. Try keep doing what you're doing, keep helping people, ignore everything else. It doesn't matter. I tell myself that every day because it can get exhausting. But when you get to a point where people are just, not everybody has the best intent for you. Um, the people that will ride on the bus with you when it's shiny and new may not be the same people that's riding with you when that thing is broken down. It's done. It didn't get hit by a tornado car and everything else. Who's left? Oprah had a more prettier quote than that, but it's one of those things of why I keep my close friends and mentors so close because when I was broken, when I was stuck, even when I have those moments, I know who I can call, who I can and talk to because they've been there, they've seen it in real time, and not everybody has that type of access, should have that type of access to you. Um, it starts with you valuing yourself enough to set those boundaries and self love. I have to say, that's something I've had to learn how to do because, of course, if you don't love yourself, you're going to let anything in when it shouldn't. So those are some of my thoughts.
No, that's so powerful, and it reminds me of something. I'm not sure if you're connected with Rachel Druckenmiller, but when
I
she
am.
gave when she gave her TEDx talk, I can't remember if it was this year. Yeah, I think it was this year. Oh no, it might have been last year actually. I think it was last year. She had this quote that really like floored me, and she said that it was kind of like a quote and a question, and it was this idea that who gets the best of you and who gets the rest of you. And I was like, oh wow, that was something to really think about because a lot of people give their best selves to the people that probably, like you said, right, shouldn't have it. And oh, this has been such a fun conversation. Sure, I remember. I think I met you when I had maybe, I don't know, less than like 1,000 connections or followers. Like we met in a mutual space and we become like really good friends. I love asking this question because in my 20s, like I- getting to do everything that I didn't ever think that I would ever do has really kind of changed my perspective on life to this point where one of my mentors asked this question and he talks about the dash. He's like, the only thing that matters in life is the dash. And I'm curious for you, like, What is that dash gonna say about Shara?
That is yet to be foreseen. I don't know. No, I do not know yet.
What's
Um,
next for you though? I mean, you've done so much. Like, what is an area that you're really looking forward to either like expanding or growing more to, or what's next for the business? I mean, you want a Stevie award. Like, talk about that. That was your first time winning that, right?
yes, that was the first time, unexpected at all. I literally, man, that was about 2 weeks ago. I'm still like like pinching myself. I was so freaked out. um Going, I think I drove my fiance crazy that day, but and I didn't enjoy, like, looking back now, those clips. I was such an anxious mess ball getting to Manhattan. I felt like I wasn't in the moment exactly at all. I drove him completely nuts. um and by the time it was over, I was like, oh, that was it. Okay. But there goes that mind, your mindset, your perception of things. And I was like, man, I wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, but I was so enthralled in just like, oh my God, what am I going to wear? What am I going to say? How's this going to go? And when I did the speech, it was like less than 30 seconds. I was like, okay, this is what it is. I'm out. I was just like, I freak out when there's a lot of people. But looking back, I was like, oh, I did okay. I'm very good at, it seems like, on the fly, just talking. Once I get into it, I'm fine. But getting that award, what I didn't know is that there were over 300 people worldwide that were trying to get that thing. I wasn't. I submitted my story. They checked it out. Um, it was about a 3 month process, and the rest I got a call in April saying, "Hey, you have won the your first business award. Congratulations, huh?" So that was that was it. Um, yeah, it's still it's still I'm still there's so many things that happened like back to back. The last 3 weeks, probably, the New York Weekly feature came out right after um, the business award, and then the co-author anthropology book that I was putting came right in after that. And I was like, oh boy. So a lot again. I still feel like half the year is gone, and I'm just like, I don't. I did a lot already. I can't tell you exactly what's going to be next, because the beauty in me just doing. If I need to think about the big picture, I freeze literally. I do know I want to do more professional development, coaching. I do know that TEDx is one of the things that it's on my goal list to do. In time, but it's just not like, oh man, I need to go do this thing immediately. It will happen when it does. I think I'm just taking this journey in stride. Everything that has happened to me so far, as fast as it did, um, I always went to into it not expecting anything, and it seems like, and not expecting everything, I got everything. So yeah.
Yeah, that's profound. Like, detachment has been a huge, huge thing for me this year, and it's like it makes life so freeing. And I love that you said that, like, when you think about big picture, you freeze, because I'm kind of the opposite. For me, like, I know that there's gonna come a time when like my time here is up. And I think for a lot of people, that's what stops a lot of people from executing is they don't really understand their relationship with time. And I've been so fortunate to understand that since I was a teenager, that when you do, it just changes the way that you move. Like, when you speak, you become more intentional with the things that you say. When you take action or you create something, you want it to mean something, right? I feel like there's a lot of people that are just existing through life instead of actually like living. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to really learn. I feel like I've learned so much about your story over the past year that I didn't know before. And yeah, this has been so fun. I want to say hello. I know there's probably more people. I will get to it later, but some people hopped in. Margaret, so good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. And who's here? Chim Amaka. Yeah, absolutely. I'm impossible because I'm possible. Yep, that's it. Sharon, good to see you. Welcome. Oh, wow. This is fascinating. Sharon says that she did a post that was personal, got over 800,000 because people connect with honest and genuineness. Yeah, absolutely. Eli, thank you so much for being here. And Michael, yeah, Michael, it is actually. I'll once it gets uploaded on YouTube, I'll drop the link in the comments. So if you guys want to rewatch it, you can. Char, I always do this before I end. I want to say thank you so much for being here. You know, you didn't have to do this, and it's just been so fun getting to chat with you. This show is like one of my legacy projects that I plan to leave behind because there's just so many unique people, and I think that one of the most impactful things that I've gained from this conversation is that when you have the courage and the vulnerability to share your story, you kind of give other people the permission to help you, right? Like when you put it out there, like with your health thing that you put it out, it's like Charles, like you need to connect with my friend, right? Like if you're not willing to put yourself out there, people don't know how that they can help you. So I want to. I'm going to hand it back to you in the full screen. Anything that you want to plug, promote, share, you are more than welcome to. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. This has been so fun.
No problem. Roxy wanted to say hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. And I hope you enjoy the story and keep the faith, keep moving forward. Thank you so much.